Buonasera. Good evening. It's my pleasure to welcome you all, our guests online and here in this room, of course, on behalf of Istituto Svizzero. We are very happy that you have decided to join this roundtable discussion, despite the very nice weather outside, at least in Rome. My name is Maria Böhmer. I'm responsible for the scientific program here at Istituto Svizzero, and I'd like to say just a few words about the context of this event tonight. So this roundtable is the third public event in the framework of our annual collaboration with the DHCH initiative, which this year is dedicated to questions of data science and cultural heritage. And we've already had an insightful keynote on Monday, a very interesting international conference this morning on 3D digitization. And now we introduce this roundtable, which promises to give insight into another very broad topic, namely international institutions in the digital age. Considering the Roman landscape of national academies and research institutions, many of whom are our close colleagues and friends, it's clear that we could have organized a 3-day event and to hear many more examples of how such institutions deal with the benefits and challenges of digital means. But I think the participating institutions and their representatives here present tonight will already show an interesting panorama of very different ways of using and managing the digital, due also, of course, to different missions and goals of the institutions themselves. And I'd like to thank Peter Fornaro and his whole team, as well as Tobias Hodel, the moderator of tonight's roundtable discussion, for co-organizing this occasion to exchange with our neighbors in the city and also internationally. I also see it as an opportunity to connect with and learn from each other. And now I'd like to pass over to Tobias, who will moderate, as I said, and I wish us all an interesting exchange. And after the discussion, you're all kindly invited to stay for an aperitivo in our garden and to benefit as much as possible from this beautiful day and non-digital encounters. Thanks a lot. Yes, I'm not used to it, but tonight I will be on the stage as well.
So, welcome also from my side. As already mentioned, my name is Tobias Hodel. I'm assistant professor in digital humanities from the University of Bern. Now, since 2021, we, as DHCH, the Digital Humanities Community of Switzerland, is a regular guest at the Istituto Svizzero here in Rome, and it's really a great way to connect DH and cultural heritage, because we're basically where the things are. And we were just running back from an excursion from ICROM, so sorry when I'm still a bit sweaty, but the buses in Rome are not suited for that temperature, seemingly. Now, the starting point for today's discussion is basically this in situ, that we are here in Rome and that all these institutes has been set up here, many of them in the 19th century, others in the 20th century, basically allowing scholars to come to Rome and study the artifacts, their documents, their things, their books here at place. And now we see a shift. As digitization does, we get access to all this means somewhere else. So basically, we can do a lot of our studies from our homes on our large screens. And a lot of the times that we're devoting here in this DHCH circle is actually talking about the methods of how we can do such research also with regards to data science, with regards to big data, with regards to machine learning. So we're basically taking a step back a bit away from this in situ. And the question, or the large question of this evening, is basically, what does this connect still? So how can we reframe these connections between these institutes and the scholarly work? And for that, I had the opportunity, and also thanks to Maria, we assembled basically the dream team of the international institutes in Rome to discuss these topics. But also what we wanted to have is this input from the scholarly side. Good. This brings me to the introduction of the participants, and all of them would deserve a lengthy introduction, but for our purpose and also to have enough time and space for discussions, I will keep this short, way too short, and I apologize beforehand. We will start afterwards with the scholarly perspective, and for that, I'm happy to welcome Regine Hunziker-Rodewald. She's a theologian by training. She studied at my university, at the University of Bern, where she also wrote her dissertation and habilitation. And now, since 2008, she's professor for Old Testament, the history of Israel, and the history of the Near East. And since 2016, and as can only be put in French, professeur des universités première classe. For several years, she's highly interested in application of digital methods and amongst other things, how we can cope with three-dimensional spaces. And her role and the one of Andrei Aioanei, sorry for mispronouncing it, who's accompanying her and who is already had a chance to pitch his PhD thesis on Monday. The perspective of the two of them is basically the scholarly one. So what do we need as scholars from the institutes? What do we need to do our research? So what how do we change the way we have access to these artifacts? Because just going to Rome doesn't do the trick anymore. We need some access to other means. We need access to different forms of data. We need access to larger forms of data. And with that, we switch the perspective to the institutions, and I will start with our host of tonight, the Istituto Svizzero in Rome, and Dr. Maria Böhmer. She's head of research, science, and innovation at the ISR since 2021. She studied in Berlin and here in Rome, and she got a PhD at the renowned European University in Firenze, where the view, we must say, is slightly better than even here at the ISR. That's true. She specialized in the history of medicine and more broadly, knowledge production in historical perspective. Then and all of these institutions will be given the opportunity to give their input. So how they are going to tackle digital approaches, how they want to bring together scholars, researchers, scientists, and also tech guys. The second institutional perspective will be brought up by the British School at Rome, by Professor Dr. Raphaële Mouren, pardon, excuse me, this switch French English, that's too much, so late. She joined the British School in Rome in May 2022, and she became their head of the research collections. Before, she was a librarian specializing on rare books, for which she also wrote the handbook, and her research focused on a wide range of topics from the history of philology to the history of scholarship and pre-modern worlds, more or less in general. Our third institutional participant is Dr. Jörg Hoernschemeyer, and he's a true and early digital humanist. He studied computer science for humanities, or as it was called in Cologne, HKI. That's a degree that has been developed by Manfred Thaler, if I'm not mistaken. He's basically one of the age fathers in Germany. And Jörg Hoernschemeyer used to work as a software developer, and he published a genetic edition to receive his PhD. Finally, and last but not least, of course, we have a representative from the Hertziana. The Hertziana we had the chance to visit in 2021, and it's on the one hand, it's a library, but it's also, and more even so, it's a Max Planck Institute for Art History. So it's very comparable to an international institute, or I need to be. Dr. Alessandro Adamou, he's a data scientist there, and he also specializes on semantic web, knowledge graphs, and ontology. So basically, he also brings another avenue in it to this whole discussion. We will start with introductory statements, first from the scholarly side, before we then move over to the institutional perspective. After that, we will have first an internal round of this discussion up here, before then moving over to questions from the public. Don't worry, their timing is set, so you will be at the apéro at the adequate time. Thanks a lot again for being here, and I will head over the mic to Regine.
Yes. Okay, thanks. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the invitation to present here our latest project. You see some keywords here on the first slide. Computational mathematics, it's because the longest it is on the top. Cognitive archaeology and anthropology is the next term, and digital humanities sure comes with it. And I added then with there could be more said, but figurines. This is, in fact, these are ancient figurines from the first millennium BC, made of clay that we collected in Jordan, and we have there a database of about 500 figurines. Now this was too fast. And again, yes. It is a collaboration that we have since many years. It's about 12 years that we collaborate. Amongst other things, I'm at the University of Strasbourg. It is a long collaboration that we have with Peter Fornaro and his team. That's why it's mentioned here also. Then AGIA, this is a new collaboration that we have with two researchers, mainly Konstantin Klein from Amsterdam at the moment. This is Roman and Greek archaeology and history, and also Dominic Michels, computational mathematician in Tuval in Saudi Arabia. And in the Keble College, we are collaborating also with Alex Aston from cognitive archaeology. So our project is called Figurine 21. This is the sign that you see here. The newest and latest project is now with the Department of Antiquities in Amman in Jordan, where we prepare at the moment a hybrid exhibition on figurines from Jordan. And we are still thinking how we will do that, that it is about figurines that are in Jordan, but also others that are just elsewhere in the world. And we try to bring them together in a collection that is with new media also shown to the people. I hand over the word to Andrei.
Thank you. My research topic, it was how to organize better the entire database of information that we have with the figurines, but also with archaeological contexts, and also with theories related with network theory in archaeology and cognitive archaeology also. And we wanted to be driven or having a research in history driven by data science or driven by data. And what we tried means that we said that we find a framework that organizes data science, but from humanities. And we said that Pearson semiotics would be a good framework. And then we said how we then try to integrate a philosophical principle with generative data science. And we tried then to search how the applications are done. Now the Pearson semiotics that is referring much more with philosophy of Peirce, that emphasizes like a triadic mode of organization of the data by signs, object, interpretants, or iconic, indexical, or symbolic values or relationship between objects. And we saw that there is, of course, in linguistic philosophy, communication archaeology, but very few applications at the level of data science. What we have, in fact, it's context of objects. We have different types of objects, different from figurines, but figurines usually are found with other objects around from in daily life usage with pottery, but even with amulets or whatever more. And even these objects now, they are in different museums. We can't, it's hard then to, when you start to research where it is each object, you have to find a lot of time-consuming research. And that's why we make a principle of data-driven. In fact, we integrated different kind of technology, machine learning for pattern recognition or positional links between objects, data mining in order to find how maybe specific figurines is related with other objects like a statue of bronze from another context that gives us the indexicality or iconicity of an object. Then we tried then to visualize these results in order that we have all the objects in a MongoDB database, and we have all the data analysis in this database, and try to promote and visualize it in a network, in fact. What the data is, in fact, we can't, at least me, with my memory, I can't come with a big or good theory how the sites are connected between them, how the objects are connected between them. It is very helpful to generate networks out of them. And that's why I found new patterns of circulation materials in ancient time, so based on trade routes, based on the material production, based on the even quality of the materials, where they are produced, because we will have some kind of petrography of the figurine, and each information is put it in a database, but we don't interpret them, or at least in the preliminary step is proposed by a data science generative interpretation. This is my idea. And then you will have some results in the way that you have some patterns of similarity, patterns of indexicality, what are around, and patterns of symbolism that is proposed by a data science driven interpretation. And it's much more easy because I can't find so easily these patterns. It has to help me a little to propose a specific relation between objects in so vast materials in engineering time. And as a conclusion, as far as the directions, we try to improve this kind of methodology driven in humanities by a good philosophical principle, and to create technology related with a philosophical principle in humanities. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It's not planned to do like a Q&A directly followed that, so we will move over to Maria.
Yes, I have to change place. Maybe what I'd like to emphasize first is that I'm actually not an expert in digital humanities, and I'm not a researcher working with databases, but as was said before, I'm head of science here at Istituto Svizzero, so I'm accompanying the development also of our digital infrastructures, and that's the perspective I was asked to give here. And thank you for inviting me to this roundtable. I'd like to say just a few words on Istituto Svizzero first, and on our general mission and what we do. So as most of you may know, we are a platform for interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary exchange and collaborations between Switzerland and Italy and internationally. Interdisciplinary here means that we welcome all the disciplines, all the scientific disciplines, humanities, social sciences, sometimes less often, of course, also natural sciences. And transdisciplinary means exchange between art and sciences. We have a fellowship program. We offer residencies for artists and researchers affiliated to Switzerland. We do this in Rome, in Milan, and also in Palermo. Obviously, in Milan and Palermo, there are fewer residencies than here in Rome, where we have this prestigious villa. We offer a public program that includes exhibitions, performances, talks, workshops, conferences, concerts, all of this always in collaboration with partners. And we have also some publication activities from time to time, and always in relation with our events or the people who we work with. We produce artist books and scientific publications. And of course, we have to deal with our patrimony and our cultural heritage. And this includes, of course, the historical villa and the garden, where we indeed have the residency program. And it also includes the archive of the Institute, and I will talk about that in a minute. Now, as to the implementation and use of digital means, which will be the focus here, I can say that we have, over the last years, invested quite a lot in a new digital infrastructure, and we have done this with a double focus. On the one hand, the focus was on the improvement of our internal work processes, And on the other hand, the focus was on the relationship with the public and the service we can offer for potential users of our documentary heritage. The overall goal was to set up a digital ecosystem that allows us to increasingly enhance the visibility and accessibility of the documentary heritage of our institution. And the digital infrastructure that we have implemented so far, and we are still in the process of doing it, basically consists of 3 pillars linked with each other, which connect different needs and activities of the institution. And I will focus on these 3 pillars in the next minutes. So the first pillar is the digital library, which is still in its staging phase, but will go online very soon. It's the channel through which the Institute will be able to display and make known its scientific and artistic heritage, that is, the documentary collections produced since its foundation, published by researchers and artists over the years. And browsing the digital library collections, external users will be able to discover, even from abroad or before visiting the physical library, which is here in the villa. They will be able to discover what materials we have and what we can make available to those who would like to pursue research with materials from our library. It will also be possible for users to browse the catalog of our physical library, which will be integrated in the digital library by importing data from the online catalog. So this is all, of course, to give access to and make visible the documentary heritage of Switzerland. This is an example. When you go to the digital library, you will find the different collections. For instance, one includes the results of archaeological excavations. One is a collection produced by residents, artists. It's a historical collection. And one is the Bibliotheca Hertziana, which is a book series today published by Schwabe, publisher in Basel, but the historical issues were produced by the Institute. And we've done the digitalization work to make them accessible online. If you then enter the collections, you will find all the different editions in high resolution, and you can browse them in the digital library. And this is true also for the artistic publications, where the resolution obviously plays a more important role. This is just to give you an impression about the digital library, which will be online available soon. I now come to the second pillar, the historical archive. We try to manage this, or we've begun to manage this with an archiving and conservation software that will provide a digital inventory of the historical archive. It will also display and make accessible several digitalized historical photographic collections, as well as a selection of digitalized historical documents. The aim here was not to digitalize the whole archive, but a selection. However, as there was no detailed inventory of the archive, what we had to do first, of course, was basic cleaning, ordering, and classification work. And we've done that with the help of professional archivists. And now that we have a thematic overview of the materials, we still must do the preparation of the digitalization itself, of course. That is, we need to decide what exactly we will digitalize and for which purpose. And defining clear criteria for this selection is very important, as one needs, of course, to identify different needs which potential users, internal and external, may have today and in the future. So the question of why do we digitalize this material and for whom is always crucial and recurring in our discussions. In any case, future users will be able to identify material of interest via the metadata provided by the digital inventory and either consult the digital copy if available, or otherwise still come to the ESR to see the original document in the archive, which of course remains. The third pillar I mentioned before is the internal documentation and workflow. We manage this with a work platform that manages the computerization of the Institute's current documentation and its digital repository. Replacing individual methods of saving and sharing material between staff members will significantly enhance the workflow in our team. And here we, of course, see the challenge that changing habits and workflows of people and transferring practices from the analog to the digital is quite a challenge and takes time, of course. And together, this digital architecture with its 3 pillars will allow to create a bridge between the different souls, so to speak, of the institution, that is between its scientific and artistic heritage and its historical documentary heritage as an institution. And at the same time, it will allow us to make visible towards the outside how we actually fulfill our mission I've explained before, namely by fostering the artistic and scientific exchange between Switzerland and Italy, and by facilitating research, and in fact by making accessible the documentary heritage. So maybe that's it from my side for now, and I'm looking forward to hear from the other institutions what is the state of the art there.
Thanks a lot. And with that, we head over to Raphaële from the British School at Rome.
I don't have a PowerPoint, but if you have internet, you can show the homepage if you want.
Oh, sorry, I cannot.
That's not a problem. So if I want to describe the British School at Rome, I will say almost the same thing that you just said. We have the same missions, and we're not the only ones. We have plenty of us with the same missions. Something specific is that the British School at Rome serves the Commonwealth. So it's a lot of countries who don't have a representation or an academia in Rome can use the British School at Rome. And in fact, we have British people, Canadian, African, Australian award holders and people coming in. So we offer awards and fellowships in fine arts. So we have fantastic artist studios in humanities, in architecture. We have a department of archaeology, which is specializing in non-intrusive methods. So you can cross their path sometimes on the Celio using strange machines look like lone mooners, but in fact they are just looking what you don't see and reconstructing Rome in 3 days. We have publications, and we have a general library and a big collection of cultural heritage. We have photographs like anybody else. We have around 400,000 photographs dating from 1860 onwards. A lot of photographs of Italy, Rome in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. So very interesting for archaeologists in particular, but more and more for people interested in the history of climate, for example. We have a big archaeological archive. We have private papers and our own archive. I'm here today in front of you in my capacity of head of research collection in charge of the library and archive, but if we have time later, I can speak about project. I'm the principal investigator of a 4-year project aiming at reconstructing a library of Greek manuscripts from the 16th century Venice that will all be digital, but maybe I can have that. So I can say that, I would want to say that more than 20 years ago, at the beginning of this century, librarians began to speak about the hybrid library. So we decided we want to build a kind of mirror of the libraries online. And are we there yet? Not exactly. We still struggle to make people understand what electronic resources we described exactly, and if the book is the electronic version of a book is available or not in the libraries. That's still a problem. But we have been working on that for almost 50 years. We agreed at the beginning of the 60s to use all the more or less the same structure of a library record. And this is why you can use today WorldCat, because we all use the same structure. So for the printed books in particular, I think we are good. Less good for other things. I want to take the example of what I'm doing at the British School at Rome and maybe what I've done before when I was a librarian at the Warburg Institute. We have catalogs. So we have catalogs to make available the collections. We have a catalog of books that is shared with 22 other libraries in Rome, Urbis, that help our availability, of course, and our visibility. We have a catalog for the archive that is officially opening in next week, but has been open, in fact, for a few months. And because we catalog differently archive and libraries, in the archive we describe collections. We rarely describe items. So we also have a digital library. And the question is indeed what for? What it offers a selection. It will never offer all the collections. And we know that the more we put things online, the more readers we want to come to see the original material in reading rooms. 20 years ago, people who decide, people who give the budget were thinking, oh, it's okay, they are putting everything online, I can close the reading room. No, fortunately. So on the contrary, some reading rooms there was nobody coming in 20 years ago. Now there are more people coming in because they have discovered the material online. So it's only selections. And it's very important to keep that in mind because, for example, I arrived at the BSR, I inherited a situation. And they have developed a very complex cataloging system. So the material, particularly photographs, engravings, are cataloged in Urbis, in COA, in Mark 21, perfectly, and then they are put in the digital library. So we have perfect records. And a lot of system we have adapted XML modes to make it offering a lot of ways of browsing by person photograph, person owner, person just being in a photo. And so it's a very complex system. But at some point, it's very important to keep in mind that we will never be able to offer a proper corpus. If you want to do a PhD on Thomas Ashby visiting Italy in 1905, the only solution is to come to the reading room and see it. So we can offer you an ID. And the fact that we are offering all these indexes, you can search the date, the place, everything, give the false ideas that it's a complete corpus. So I think it's very dangerous. And what we don't offer is that complete corpus. So in my view, our digital libraries aim is to showcase what we have with one particular, so to maybe the general public, but also to researchers who may be interested in finding a new corpus, a new collection that is interesting for their research, but they don't know it exists, so they will find it with Google. And I think that's more and more my aim, to just make available just the knowledge of the existence of the collection with a few images so people can understand what it is. Not always the case. We have hundreds of pictures of inscriptions in Libya. So if you are a specialist, you have everything online, you're good. So recently we have created a new tool to go beyond the research collections. So we have developed our own Omeka platform to create a virtual exhibition. It's important, it's not digital, it's virtual. And I asked our consultant, same consultant for all of us, to create 3 different templates to create virtual exhibition. One template is just a story, a small story. One template is for images and pictures. So you have a kind of thumbnail, you can go from an image to another. And the last one is supposed to be like a proper exhibition. You can have different parts, first part, second part, third part. And the idea is that in that way, it's extremely easy to use for everybody, and not only the staff in the library, but also the researchers, the award holders, the artists. And the idea worked immediately. I said to everybody, okay, we are having that, and I want to create a few virtual exhibitions before opening it. And immediately our archaeologist, Steve Kay, created an exhibition on architectural drawings of Ostia at the beginning of the 20th century. our fine art advisor created an exhibition with Adam Schotzko on art, and we have one of our research fellow created an exhibition of Thomas Ashby and another one about Pyrenees. So it worked immediately, and I'm hoping to be able to develop more things and to open to other sections of the school and to other to people who are just here for a few months, and actually it's open to all if you want to come copy. So I think this is something that works very well, and maybe I will no, I will finish by saying that the problem is the visibility. So you've seen we still have more than one tool. We cannot have everything together. I say that because when I sent my project for funding, one of the reviewers was asking, why don't you put everything together? It's because a banana is not a strawberry, and a library catalog is not a digital library. There are different things. If I wanted to force a digital library to be a catalog, it would be a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of problems and a lot of money. So I can't do that. Maybe a problem, it is what it is. So I'm finishing now.
Thanks a lot. And with that, we move over to the German Historical Institute and Jörg Hoernschemeyer.
Yes, thank you very much also for from my side for inviting me and giving me the possibility to present our institute or also our DH activities. And yeah, I will start. The German Historical Institute in Rome has been founded in 1888, and since 2002 it is part of the Max Weber Foundation, an organization of the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research, which maintains 11 autonomous research institutes in the field of humanities and social sciences abroad. The research of the German Historical Institute in Rome is dedicated primarily to Italian and German history, of course, with a focus on German-Italian relationships from the early Middle Ages to contemporary history, and that's unique in our foundation, also the strong focus on music history. Central to us are an interdisciplinary and trans-epochal perspective and a particular focus on trans-regional and transnational contexts in Southern Europe and the Mediterranean area. These research topics are also reflected in the holdings of our library, which is open to the public. On the one hand, it offers historical holdings and music history collections with approximately 300,000 physical media units. On the other hand, a growing number of digital media like ebooks, e-journals, and databases, and new digital services, most recently a free scanning service of book excerpts and journal articles, which can be requested by email, so don't hesitate. And last but not least, we have also a strong interest in the digital humanities. We have been supporting researchers in the implementation of the digital projects for around 20 years, at the beginning with in-house and external funding, and since 2016 with a permanent position of historical information science and digital humanities. The support ranges from proposal writing in externally funded projects, technical consulting and coordination in the fields of data modeling, implementation of digital workflows, web publishing, and hosting of web applications and interfaces created in these projects. So far, the DHI Rome has been involved in the development of about 20 projects in the field of digitization, digital editions, databases, data collections, and information systems. Frequent common use cases of DH activities at our institutes are digitization projects for rare books and manuscripts collections, data curation and publishing, software development in the fields of digital editions, prosopographic data, resources, and other information systems, evaluation of digital methods, and academic support through DH internships and courses. We place a special focus on the continuous user-centered development of our research data. In the beginning, our focus was more on the publication of research data in form of web interfaces, which only had the human users in mind. The output was already digital, but with a traditional reading purpose. Recently, however, we have also been increasingly supporting access to our data via machine-readable interfaces. We now also offer research data via specialized RESTful APIs, see it here, In addition to raw XML TEI data, we also provide specific formats for research. For our digital editions of historical letters, for example, the specialized correspondence metadata interchange format of the TEI, the German text archive basic format, Deutsches Textarchiv Basisformat, and also authority data in the so-called beacon format. Also important in this context is the interoperable digital provision of our library collections. We are very much inspired by our Roman colleagues of the library network Ovis, which also includes the British School and the American Academy. Following their example, our upcoming digital collection IIIF server is currently under construction. Our institute will, in addition, participate in the ongoing efforts of the library network to establish a shared infrastructure for digital exhibitions. For the AI-driven generation of full texts, we are instead oriented towards the very promising software initiatives such as, of course, Transcribus, OCR for All, or eScriptorium, for example. In developing such services, we always rely on feedback from the research community in order to prepare useful data. We try to achieve this by direct contact with the universities and chaires of the digital humanities and historical sciences. We participate in academic courses, master seminars, and doctoral colloquia to present our projects. And we are very pleased when our research data is used and we are open to suggestions for improving our services. We also participate in the creation of the National Research Data Infrastructure in Germany, the so-called NFDI. The aim of NFDI is to systematically manage scientific and research data, provide long-term data storage, backup and accessibility, and network the data both nationally and internationally. To represent our interests and also to promote the global perspective on the DH, we are, together with other institutes of the Max Weber Foundation, mainly active in the 3 humanities consortia, Text Plus, NFDI for Culture, and NFDI for Memory. In order to discuss digital humanities in a global perspective, we organize, also in collaboration with the Max Weber Foundation, events such as the one from the virtual DHD, discussing the 7 C's of DH, a global fishbowl, where international experts reported on their very region-specific DH experiences. With regard to the increasing internationalization, it makes also sense to design research projects directly within this international framework. Such a project will start in autumn. The transnational DFG ANR project Graceful 17, Global Governance, Local Dynamics, Transnational Regimes of Grace in the 17th Century Roman Dataria Apostolica. This project aims to explore and investigate papal regimes of grace and their local dynamics in the early modern period with the help of digital methods. Graceful 17 is based on the partnership between the Goethe-Universität Frankfurt, the École Nationale des Chartes in Paris, the German Historical Institute in Rome, so it's us, and the École Française de Rome and the Université Reims-Champagne. Okay, and coming to the end, there are also challenges, especially in the context of our foundation, but I think also in general, we have to face them. The situation of DH, especially in the Max Weber Foundation as a whole, is somewhat disparate. While some institutions have a strong focus on DH, there are also institutes where this play no role at all. Often this depends on the individual commitment of researchers or on the focus of the respective institute management. So the situation is anything but stable. There is great kind of fluctuation here, and in our DH working group, there are sometimes librarians, sometimes IT managers, sometimes historians who otherwise don't have much to do with it. Secondly, we have also sustainability issues with temporary project funding. The question here is always what happens to the data, to software, to data platform, to digital editions after the end of the project, or better, after the end of the data life cycle. And we think there are still a lot of unresolved problems. And there's also some difficulty finding well-qualified DH staff, especially with regard to this dual qualification. So it could be difficult to find someone who still who fills the D and the H in the DH equally. And last but not least, in addition to the last point, data or digital literacy in academic teaching should also be fostered more. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will move over to the Hertziana, which I learned yesterday is located just some 100 meters from here. So, Alessandro.
Thank you very much. So as Tobias well put it, we are kind of a sui generis Max Planck Institute in that we're not located in Germany, we don't do hard sciences, and despite the name, we're not a library. But we do have a library, a physical library, so rich, in fact, in our history volumes that when the new Max Planck Society president came to visit us, he was actually taken aback by how many physical books we have compared to all the other Max Planck Institutes in the hard sciences back there in Germany, where basically the two libraries. We are part of an FDR for culture as well, and I've been thinking from all the talk I've been hearing just this afternoon that we probably shouldn't be having a foot into the other two consortia and FD that you mentioned. And I said, like, we're not a library, we have a library. It is one of the core components of the Hertziana, along with a very extensive photographic library of close to 800,000 photographed elements of art history ranging from the Renaissance to the late 17th century, as well as two main research departments and individual research teams, at the crossroads of which lies the DH Lab, which I'm part of. The DH Lab itself in the Bibliotheca Hertziana is a rather peculiar organization in that officially it only has 2 members, me being one of them. But as a matter of fact, all the other departments and specific research teams have at least one ambassador as part of the DH Lab. And this kind of fosters not only the development of a mutual understanding of the specific data-related needs of the respective teams, but also helps foster the birth of research questions, and also helps understand the challenges. Now, thanks to all the introductions that we've had, I'm going to take you straight to that, to the challenges. Like I said, we have digital library, we have a photo library, but also have individual research project primarily focused on documenting and cataloging rather than inferring specific new knowledge coming from the analysis of such data. In most of the cases of the project that we had, such as the mapping of toponyms, the association to churches in Rome, and the assignment of those churches to international communities present in Rome, it mostly is a work performed ahead of populating the database in the catalog. And this also caused a number of probably usual issues when it comes to having each research lead working in their own controlled environment and creating yet another data silo, which then leads to the problem of putting me in the middle of all these project undertakings and try to understand how to reconcile the data that each project has been developing, sometimes over and over again, sometimes reinventing the wheel simply because they thought that their own research was more authoritative than anything else with respect to describing, say, the Church of San Luigi dei Francesi, for one thing, or the Church of San Crisogono in Trastevere. Then, of course, this poses a challenge of, in a way, reconciling the identities of all these art history elements. So built works, artworks, of course, people, places, but not only the usual suspects. Also, we're talking about materials, techniques, specific typologies of liturgical furnishings. There is a general interest in somehow having a link somewhere with the German authority when it comes to the GND, most definitely. But the goal is bringing this together between the different identities that these things have in the different Hertziana projects, as well as with the GND, with the Getty, ULAN, and Wikidata, and what have you. So that although we might be regarding at specific facets of a knowledge graph, describing something specifically, here we have the Church of Santo Stefano Rotondo in this graph. You see I've circled different islands here. You could kind of call them that simply because they originate from specific research projects or reconciliation activity. But we have one project that will tell us that San Giovanni Rotondo was at one point restored in 1454 by order of Pope Nicholas V, if I remember correctly. Another one that tells that it's located in the indeed, Via Santo Stefano Rotondo, that it was assigned to the Hungarian community, and it's an active church still assigned to that community today. Now, this comes from different projects, but the goal is to basically take the output of this project in their relational, most likely silos, and transform all that into RDF-based knowledge graphs rendered using the usual Sarok CRM, FRBR, and all the great models that you all know and love. Now, the challenge is not only technical. It doesn't just depend on the fact that this was made using, say, MySQL. That one was made using Memento Relational DB and had a WordPress front end and all that. It's not just a matter of turning that into semantic data. It's also a matter of, I've heard data literacy. That's part of the problem. It's actually developing the culture within the research teams that we have in the Hertziana, so that they understand the importance of, well, not only releasing the data as in an open form, but also why would they want to conform to specific standards and what they have to gain by linking the data. So it's not just a problem of digitization. Our departments at the library and the photo library are already very good with creating digital items out of analog ones. The problem is no longer having yet a born digital research project. It is about having one that is born semantic, born fair, born linked. Now, we have one of three possible strategies, depending on the state and the nature of the project. One is, ideally, we foster the creation of a new research project, be natively fair, being born as linked open data. And whilst about 10, 15 years ago, this wasn't really feasible with the CMSs that we had, now this is suddenly becoming a thing. I've heard mentions of Omeka S as well as Whiskey. They're just the beginning. Now with system like Research Space, MetaFacts, and the Swiss developed SARI RDS platform, there is a possibility now, and we're implementing it within the Hertziana, to actually build specific projects on specific topics. One is an example, magnetic margins, which is a census of tomes from the 17th century on magnetism. But then we have others like one of mapping sacred spaces, which is under development, and we're also developing an RDS-specific occurrence for an exhibition of the archives of artist Mauro Staccioli, of modern artist Mauro Staccioli, which will open in October at the Hertziana. When you already have an established project with its own technological stack, you can't just go there and say, yeah, adopt Research Space. I've heard Maria mention the new workflows, revolutionizing workflows. In some cases, this is something we cannot afford. They are an established project. The workflows are there. The challenge for us is to tap into those workflows, not disrupt them, find a hook into them that allows us, for example, from that legacy database to publish a RESTful API, a query endpoint. We're working on doing something like this for the Bibliotheca, which is an eminent example because the Bibliotheca metadata in our case are formalized largely, as you see in the center. What you see in the center is a representation of a scheme called Midas, which comes from Marburg and is documented only in German. I can't make heads or tails of it for one thing, and I guess many of my fellows have that issue, but there are ways to counter that. Even today, there are libraries specific for querying non-semantic data as if they were already represented in RDF. So software libraries like Sparkle Generate or Sparkle Anything that allow you to like build a facade on top of like XML, JSON, CSV, even HTML, just textual data tokenized as you will, and be able to query them in Sparkle as you would any RDF resource. And as you know, Sparkle is not just a language of querying, it's a language that is standard, W3C, for creating new knowledge. You can actually spit out new facts, new assertions, new statements from it. And that's what we're doing in many of the cases where we have to tread carefully and not disrupt existing workflows. Then when the project is not actively developed, but somehow it's still important to external users that it be available in that format, that's even easier for us, you know, because we can also start allowing more traditional ETLs, so extract, transform, load processes that are common in data warehousing, which normally we wouldn't do in a running project, to apply in legacy project. But still, we can use software libraries and technologies that allow us to map from those legacy models into RDF that we can model to our liking inside Orc and Ferber and what have you. And all this, just like we like to see coming together as one knowledge graph, even though there are actually multiple graphs, so too we intend to make all this accessible primarily through one data and query and API endpoint. Although it remains that, you know, if individual project leads wish to have their own query endpoint, they can still do so. But this is actually right now coming together through one knowledge graph, which we're exposing through the as yet soft launched data.bibliohertz.it, which currently serves just short of 10 million RDF triples, most of them coming from the photo library, but also from several of the cataloging projects. And like I said, this is a set of very significant challenges, not only for technologies, but also for the former mentees of researchers themselves, which I think it's all the more reason why it's important to, you know, to be in a roundtable as this is. And with that, I conclude my part. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot to all of you. I think that has been really broad, basically from library access to scholarly editions, and now finally to linked open data, and more so a lot of networked activities, I think, that we have seen. I would like to go a bit back to where we started, basically, to the research part, and I would like to ask Regine and Andrei that what you have seen is basically a vast corpus of, in a sense, very different, but also like immensely rich cultural heritage offering that you get. So what is, when you get this, and assuming that this would be your research topics, and I know it's sometimes deviating in other directions, but assuming that that would be your research direction, what would you further need from these institutes in order to be like faster, more to the point, more advanced, let's call it, especially if we have in mind you want to use, or you're using machine learning applications which require notoriously massive amounts of data, even if you do generate data. I know, Andrei, that this is your take on that. But so basically, what if you would come with a wish list to this institute, what would it be? This is your only chance.
I think what you also said, connecting, linking knowledge, information, because each research comes with a new result, specific object, specific measurement, specific digitalization or an RTI or an inscription. But when we connect them, we see some patterns that we couldn't have. This as it becomes much more rich, and connecting the information between them, we found new questions, in fact, because we are in front of a data that we have to explain. This furthers another cycle of research for me. That's why, as we have with Marian, generates a 3D texture that enters in my research, and I give something for historian that I say that trade networks are related to the economic networks, and this generates another question, and so forth.
Yeah.
And I think for me that networking.
And how, if I may ask to the institutions, like in general, how could you foster this further networking? I mean, we have seen the NFDIs are like one approach where you can get in contact. Do you have other strategies? Because Switzerland doesn't have an NFDI.
If I may come with an idea for a strategy that is not so much about networking, but it goes back again to how you would represent your data interoperably so that it would indirectly foster the networking, is indeed the fact that you have to search for standards. And sometimes standards, they reflect the need to look for patterns. I have in the past worked on and developed a data-intensive project about music history. And I did that not being a music historian myself, and knowing how to catalog, how to model data from a bibliographical perspective, but not being able to tackle very much other aspects. So it turned out we had something that was very interoperable had it been a digital library, but it wasn't helping very much when it came to actually modeling something like, it was about experiences of listening to music, actually. So say Charles Dickens visiting Italy and going to church and hearing mass, that sort of thing. We had to bring that back to the drawing board later because we realized that although the model we had built was good for that project, it kind of inhibited possible future research questions that didn't belong in that project, but could have been of interest to other communities and players, stakeholders in general. So what we did is take that model, we abstracted that so as to create actually knowledge patterns for aesthetic experience, and then lowered it back to the experience of music, experience of reading, possibly in the future experience of, of looking at works of art and what have you. But I think indirectly there is that. Many people develop their models based on the research questions that they have to address. But if you don't actually look out of that box already at the time of modeling, then you have to put in an additional effort before you can actually build community in this regard.
I think that's a great answer, but also a problematic answer from a scholarly perspective, of course, because then I would argue and say, yeah, but I have my very specific research question, and this is the reason why I modeled my thing the way I did. But of course, I mean, we have these standardization discussions all the time. So I think that and it's always really hard to convince the ones to switch to others and to then really develop something further. Great. I would like to move on to a next question before I would like to open to the room. And this is something that has been brought up by Raphaële and the whole selection processes. But interestingly, as soon as we encounter digital collections online, and all the institutes talked about, we want to put our digital collections online, more or less, very broadly put. And then we face these collections and we have this idea that they are somehow complete, but at the same time we know that they are only glimpses. So how can we manage these processes? Because on the one hand, and I think if I understood Raphaële correctly, it is also about luring people into their collections and by showcasing, by showing how cool things that there are. But at the same time, it's not the whole corpus. So how can we deal with this like in-betweenness so that you will find the very shiny stuff and maybe the rest is still a bit hidden, and how can we support that? Because as we know, the term side glancing comes to mind, where people basically Google something and they find something adjacent to what they were looking for, and then they dive into that, but that's always like related to what is online.
I will tell you a story. I left my previous job 1 year ago. I was very frustrated because for years I had built a project, the Warburg library online. So it was about completing the catalog, we already had a good archive catalog. We had a iconological photographic collection. We created a digital library. We'll also open a thematic open repository that was mirroring the existing library. And from the beginning, my aim has been to finish that with a proper search engine. And I know it exists, and I know they have it in one of the libraries. So, but it was never developed. Like some people, particularly library and archive, didn't see the need of a search engine. And it's something I didn't say today, is that it's my aim, because you look at the search engine and I can tell you, this is a part of this collection of photographs. We have 345 photographs about that and that and that. It's just not detailed. And then we can say, but of this, you can find immediately 50 detailed description of 50 images. And then you can have access to the images. And then you can have access to another 10 of them organized in a virtual exhibition. So this goes through, and it relates to your previous question. It's all about interoperability and having data that is born fair, which is a problem for libraries because we are still in MARC, blocked in MARC. So we have to extract the data from MARC, which is feasible. But I think it's from the beginning, things are interoperable. So we are following norms and formats. We are not creating our own structure because I am a scholar, so I know better. I have to do things completely different than everybody else. That means that my data will not be reusable by anybody in the future. So I think that's very sorry.
That's a really nice statement. I don't know if someone wants to follow up on that. I don't think that we will find contradictory statements on screen on the podest. Are there questions from the public?
First, I must apologize because the conference, so sorry, apologies. I have a question that I wanted to pose that raised to my mind listening at the experience of the figurine and the fact, the last discussion about the fact that not all the information is online. Well, I was thinking that in a way, we are afraid of the artificial intelligence because it is going to substitute our intelligence, to take a decision on our behalf, to deviate our thinking. But if we use the artificial intelligence as a way to pose questions, and we, human, respond to the questions that are posed through the artificial intelligence, if I understand well the experience of the figurine, this is a less frightening approach. Clearly, we have again the control in our hands, that is, what do we leave the artificial intelligence to observe? Because if we do not put online what is necessary to be observed, then the questions that are raised by the artificial intelligence in this different role of humans and artificial are not the right ones. But I was fascinated by the idea that AI can become a way to observe and to pose questions. And then it is again to the researchers to try to find the answers to these questions.
Thanks.
So it is a comment that I wanted to share, and your opinion would be very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this artificial intelligence or machine learning is basically in the gorilla in every room nowadays. So
Thank you very much for this reaction. I think it's not about replacing one method by another, and to see that the human eye is still around, and the knowledge that we have on the level of history, of comparison, of art history, all what comes with it, anthropology, is in combination with. I think we have to learn also not to think black and white, but to introduce new methods that are around, that will hopefully also will come more of it, and to try how we can combine. And we, the humans, after me, it's all important that we discuss amongst us also on the level of interdisciplinarity, to find out how to use it now and not to be afraid. I would say no, not at all.
Fine. Short comment.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. And Mark, I want to say, clarify a little, because there is the use of AI, for example, as my own thinking, by prompting. I want to develop a technology that you can prompt, for example, a model related with figurines or inscription. But this is personal use, adaptation, and it's an individual, but it's a collective regulation of AI. This is two different ways. At the individual, you can use it in personal knowledge management, and by prompting, even large databases, from statistics to prompting information much more easily. But the difference is technological regulation of some corporation. There is differently society, or at the level of society, that is, it's not about me. I can't do anything about it. I can only play with the technology and trying to use it productively around the framework of research. In this way, there is two different levels, individual and collective.
yeah, I think that's a good differentiation to make. Yeah, Maria wanted to add.
No, I didn't want to follow up on this, but I had a question for Raphaële. So I think if
Sure.
anyone was on the AI discussion, I would wait, and otherwise,
Yeah.
I'll take up after.
Good. Thank you.
Yes. First of all, congratulations. It was very nice idea to bring all of you here. Secondly, I would like to ask you the following. If it's all about digital knowledge or knowledge in the digital era, harvested from the past, the biggest database of complex a database available in the analog form or even in digital partially. At the beginning of the digital century and during the digital transformation, especially in the humanities, then I would like to ask you, because it has been mentioned the word standards in a couple of times, where do you see the horizon or the direction in the horizon of all this, what you are doing at the moment when there are no standards in this particular area? Standards in the grammatic or even in the semantic, except the CITOC CRM or the whatever other island solutions existing where someone waits at least some funding is coming so that the sustainable continuation exists. What is your opinion?
We're getting really fundamental here.
What is your opinion? Because then in the way of how it is today, personally, I see, yes, we will expire also, yeah? Sometime our institutions will tell us now it's time for you to go home. And if not, the institution is coming to an end. It's not working anymore, or it's not interesting to work in this particular, or to invest in this particular area. And big, but really big companies are taking over, like Microsoft, like Amazon, like Google, like Facebook, like Twitter, like, But you know, because you are humanists, where can we find today the pharaohs? They were also up. Those from the Hellenistic time period, those from the Roman time period, those from the Byzantine time period. We find them, all of them, in the museums. They were up, then they went down. And what is going to happen if the number one knowledge machine currently in the digital era existing, Google, for example, or Microsoft, tomorrow morning will declare bankruptcy? Where we're going to be? Are you going to be able to have such a nice PowerPoint presentations or the cloud? What is the risk for you? Humanists, for us, the European Union? We're going to have another one crisis like the COVID or even worse. But please, I would like to hear your opinion.
I mean, maybe we can
We are not even thinking about that as we are moving to the smart city dimension. Everything. And not even under our control,
I totally agree with the points you made, but maybe we should try to reframe it so that it gets a bit more manageable for people on stage. So maybe we can go, if I may, maybe we can go more the direction of the sustainability, because this is one of the urgent questions of all of these platforms that are being built, that are quite expensive to build. I mean, the German Historical Institute is hosting an edition, which basically is a commitment for some time, eternity, long time. So how can we deal with this factor, if that's okay with you? Because I think we cannot. Yeah. Maybe this would be like, so there we have an angle. So what are your sustainability strategies in that sense?
Yeah, that is a good question, and I think it's an unresolved question. So if you think about, as particular special this digital editions, we have a particular problem with that, because we have not only the data level, we have also the presentation level, and the edition is not only the data or only the presentation or the interface. It is often, or as it's in general, the two things together, because also the interface is just a process of thinking, a process of interpreting the data. And if we only wanted to save the data level, it would be for no help. It wouldn't be very helpful for that one who wanted to use this digital edition like it was meant to be. So we are always dealing with this problem that everything told us, yeah, data first, we have to save the data, but particular meant in this kind, in this with this problem, we have this this twofold problem of this two levels of data.
Yeah, I think with Scholar Edition, Switzerland made its experience with the NIAINE project. So I don't know if some of you recall that. So that completely failed because the two levels never clicked together, basically.
Maybe just a thought. I think when we speak about sustainability, it's also useful to connect it to the things we said before about selecting, because sustainability is not to save everything. So sometimes I think it's too easy to make this link that to be sustainable means saving everything. But instead, I think it's very important to always think about why do we save things and for which purpose. And maybe there is a project that has has had its time, and then it's also fine to not keep all the web pages, to not keep everything that has been done. So it's also about like deciding what to keep and what to dedicate the space you pay for, what you will actually conserve.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, the knowledge is somehow represented within the data and the data model, of course. Yes, yeah, I agree. But still that, I mean, in a sense, I think if we talk about data and then in a way we try to represent the knowledge. Absolutely. But I mean, then we could also make the argument that that is what publications are for. And I think like storing PDF is basically a rather solved problem. I say that on tape.
I agree to some extent that there is, even when you look at digital publication, the problem kind of perpetuates itself, even when you are in search for a standard in ways to preserve it. You know, we were all like, DOIs will save us. The EPIC identifier system will save us. AAAF for making citable images referenced in the publication will save us. And then in the end, it all takes us so far because we're going in the usual joke. There are now 1001 standards after which we try to bring the previous 1,000 ones together. But ultimately, I believe it's kind of a system that, because it's able to actually generate not merely replicas, but like different ways to make the same content and data accessible. And I could bring back to the example I was citing, that we tap into existing workflows and produce other APIs out of it in hopes that they will be more understandable than others are in the longer run, is something that should be able to actually mitigate the problem of, you know, dealing with too many standards, if at the cost of replication, which might be going then against the notion of like green open data, which has been a thing in the past like 13 years or so. You know that right now, if you want to access a publication, you actually want to make a publication available, to print it costs 1/4 of how much it would cost on the digital version for only accessing it once in terms of carbon footprint. I'm talking about that kind of cost. So in a way, there are two problems that balance themselves. Sustainability in that regard could hardly come if not at the expense of these other aspects, which are ultimately as ethical as sustainability is. Being green might get in the way.
Yeah. Maria is on the list for a long time.
Yeah, actually, I was so interested in what you said about the virtual exhibitions, and it sounded that it's seen as very attractive by scholars, and I was just wondering about how you measure the success of these virtual exhibitions. Do you see that many people are browsing them, or looking at the web pages, and what is the benefit for the researchers actually to invest in this project?
I think we've been struggling to put the analytics on.
Okay.
What I like is that it links internally. It links the departments. Internally, it gives opportunity to, particularly for our research fellows, people who are not a member of staff, but strongly linked to us, or using the collections a lot, to showcase and to use their research to benefit, and this benefit to us. And so we can show off what we do. The next project will be to put together things that have been done online and to create particularly a better way of showing what we've done on Piranesi, for example. We have 2 research projects, 2 collections in the digital library, everything described in the catalog, plus a virtual exhibition. That's not possible. So it's where I am now, but I cannot answer your question because I have been asking regularly where we are with the analytics. And
Okay,
we are
I see.
nowhere.
But then we should also pose the question whether it makes sense to count this numerically. So what does it mean when someone
Sure.
enters a URL? I mean, could be, and most of the time it's a bot anyway, and the rest of the time. Yes, of course. But okay, yeah. So, but then we're getting not this like this number and the chart, but rather like then it gets more in depth. And I think that would be more like, so how engaging is it so that people really spend time on a
Yeah,
place? So
actually, I was
think
more
that-
interested in the aspect of why it would be beneficial for them to invest in
Yeah.
the project. So, and you answered it. So, thanks.
I think if I may, yeah, because
course.
we are in this discussion also, and we are coping with data that we got from somewhere, huh? And we are storing them here in very sophisticated systems that are more and more developed and wonderful. I adore it. But in fact, then like now we have the figurines from Jordan, and in Jordan they have not direct access, even when this is online, huh? But all these very sophisticated systems, not in the first sense they have access. And so this is now how to translate this data via museology and via just heritage preservation, conservation, and give it back in a certain way, yeah? But in a translated way. And how to translate it then by combined exhibitions, because some of the data are in the country in the shape of objects, and this can be shown in a museum. And then other data, they are elsewhere in the world. And there we can work now with this digital or much more developed data to bring them together again. And this is for me a question of ethics also, not just to collect the data and to be happy with it and develop it more and more and more and make projects here in Europe based and in these countries now for these figurines. They are a bit in another system. Huh? It's not less, it's not better, it's just another system to collaborate also on this level and to bring this data again in a loop,
Right.
that they are not just here then in Switzerland or wherever in France stored.
Yeah, I think
For me important. Yeah.
before I give the word to Raphaële, I think this is also an important point because we already heard about the FAIR principles, but if we take the CARE principles into action, then that is basically one of these aspects because it's required basically that we combine it with the communities that are really where the artifacts are coming from, basically, and I think this is a way to do that. But Raphaële.
Yes, I want to say we have work now with 3 scholars on preparing virtual exhibitions, and some things they obviously enjoyed was changing the way they write and write description for general public.
Mm.
Well, one of them was putting footnotes so that they know you don't put footnotes. But they really enjoyed that, sharing their research in a completely new way. I saw that they were very happy.
Okay, yeah.
Question for the first speaker. So from what I understood, you're using some kind of machine learning to do classify. So it's classification where it finds kind of feature correlations. So that might give you a correlation, but it does not give you a narrative necessarily. So do you think that these language models now that are coming up and a combination of the correlation and the language models can be combined and trained on all, for instance, relevant text of an era, and maybe follow, for instance, a dating, the trace of a figurine of a deity through cultures, through languages, and kind of provide a narrative as well by the combination of this correlation that probably couldn't be done by a human.
Thank you. This is the idea that I want to do, to implement. The narrative, it's and the storyline. It's human. It's human. Machine can propose a specific points that then it's much more easy to write the story with this knowledge, because knowledge it's not entirely objective. As much you have more information, it's much more, the story changes. This was I wanted to show. As you have more information, the network changes, the fluctuation of information switches from a side to another side. And the flow of materials shows that it's not from east to west, it's not, it's much more decentralized. And then changes our interpretation of a specific time, in why that we, either the object doesn't simplify, represents a goddess, in fact that this is much more showing, reflecting the flow of economics in that time, the flow of ideas that follows also economics, and much more try to complicate a little, in fact, the ancient life. It was not so simple. In fact, that craft, how it was done. When you collect, now we can, with petrography, you put also this information in the database, and you find out that an object was produced here, was then circulated in another site, it was thrown in another part, so forth. And trying to recreate this story of a life of an object, it's fascinating. But the storyline, it's somehow human.
I may. And there are blind spots. Sure, what he says is correct. But some of these figurines, for example, they have a very worn surface. And we see a bit, but yeah, and it's an interpretation of humans. Somebody says, I see that, the other says, but I see more or less that, and I think, and so, and to have there something that is probably, I hope so, more objective, that you can compare worn figurines and put them in their context again. And then are all these fragments, because 96% of what we have are fragments. This is a shame to say, or it's a pity, or it's good, okay. And how to join fragments, and same heads, then with same bodies and all this, because if not, we have too many blind spots and the narrative will be very subjective again. Wonderful, but the tricky thing is with the combining. How? Sorry.
Yeah, the question got lost on Zoom, but we will make sure that the mic is faster. By that, I would also encourage people on Zoom, of course, to come up with questions also through the chat, but maybe there's another question in the room here. Yes, Vera, thanks. Over there.
Thank you very much. So thanks for all these nice insight in these different institutions coming from processes and towards objects, and also critical issues about what about Google? How are we selling our souls via this digital codex that we are using now? Then this led me to the question, should we really engage in producing digital twins, like really digital objects, or rather use it as kind of a reproduction media, as we used the printed medias that we didn't want to recreate 3D things in a book, right? But it was about sharing knowledge and connecting data or thoughts. And should we then, thinking about sustainability and also footprints, rather say that we have to be more careful about producing digital objects and twins and worlds? That would be my question.
That's also quite a hard question, I think. Does anyone feel entitled? You want to say? Please wait a second for the mic.
why do we talk in digital humanities about digital twins and not memory twins? Digital twin is something which comes from the engineering area of research, of innovation, and so on. The humanities, this is what actually you are recreating. If it's a tangible object, yes, indeed, it's just only the geometry and some information around that, and that's a digital twin. But humanities are going beyond that. It's knowledge we heard about that, yeah? It's a memory, it's the story. And something which is unique, that the engineers, you know, they don't care about that. And you care, the humanists that care, especially take care of that, is identity.
Which
And
is
that's
also
the
quite
unique.
complex.
Yeah, you care about that.
Yeah, but that's
The
also quite a
engineers, they
complex.
say, yeah, if the machine works. If the motor is there, and yeah, simulation is perfect. Okay, let it be. That's okay, it's done. Semantically, mathematically, huh? Chemically, environmentally, it's perfect. But on your side, still not perfect. If the identity is not there, and if it's not correctly, the knowledge,
Yeah, but it's also conceptually quite difficult to talk about twins, for example, or because this is like a hereditary entanglement that you're referring to, which I think is as a concept not. I don't think that we should go in that direction. But
a nice example, which I am discussing several times with my students, is democracy. If I will, let's say, try to document what is democracy from the time of the creation of democracy, then of course this what exists today is not that what it has been invented.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we can say this what exists today. If we have it in the digital era, this is a digital twin, but could be in brackets.
Yes.
But the memory twin is totally different.
Yeah, I know. I think I know what you're aiming at.
Several countries have even using the word democracy in their name,
of course,
democratic or whatever. But okay. Anyway, thank you very much. Yeah, congratulations once again.
Good. I think we will need to move over, and we need to move non-virtually to the top. So I think one of the main points that struck me and that I didn't think about before we started the discussion is that digitization for the institutes is also a mean of empowerment of the institutes, because they get into a more active role. So we heard about the digital exhibitions, we heard about like the creation of knowledge graphs. So basically through this digital means they can basically also form the way they are getting perceived from the outside, and they can basically actively attract new people and other groups through this digital means. And I think this is also a quite important shift, which has nothing to do with technological things and inventions, but rather due to the fact that the accessibility gets differently, and due to the fact that we can make some infrastructures available. With that, I would like to thank a lot our speakers today and give them a great applause for the end. And I now can invite you to go up to shared apero, thanks to the ESR in combination with the DHCH consortium. And let's go up to the garden, because I think the weather should be nice. And also, I would like to thank our speaker with giving them something from Bern. It's not chocolate, but it's still a specialty from Bern that's sweet. So thanks again, and I will see you all upstairs in a moment.